everybody doing? All right, amazing artists. Today, what I want to do is, hello, by the way. What I want to do is I want to do some Eric Carle inspired art. So, yesterday, whenever I posted a few pieces of paper with some paint on them, that was the beginning of my Eric Carle inspired art. So I hope that you had some time yesterday to just paint some sheets of paper. If not, you can go ahead and do that now and then pause the video and go and let it dry and then come back and finish the video whenever your paper is dry. Eric Carle wrote some amazing books. One of my favorite books that he wrote is Mr. Seahorse. And in Mr. Seahorse, he actually used some tissue paper and painted the tissue paper. And then he cut his shapes out of the tissue paper and turned those into the illustrations in his book. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to do a quick read of Mr. Seahorse and then get to the art. So Eric Carle's Mr. Seahorse. Mr. and Mrs. Seahorse drifted gently through the sea. Mrs. Seahorse began to wiggle and twist this way and that. Let's move it over here. "It's time for me to lay my eggs," she said. "Can I help?" asked Mr. Seahorse. "Oh, yes, thank you," said Mrs. Seahorse, and she laid her eggs into a pouch on Mr. Seahorse's belly. "I'll take good care of our eggs," said Mr. Seahorse. "I promise." As Mr. Seahorse drifted gently through the sea, he passed right by. This is the coolest part. These books are so cool because look, they have clear sheets. And you get to look through the grass to see a group of trumpetfish hidden in a patch of reeds. How cool is that? So I'm going to do something kind of like this, but without the clear stuff. But before long, Mr. Seahorse met another fish. "How are you, Mr. Stickleback?" asked Mr. Seahorse. "Delighted," replied Mr. Stickleback. "I just built a nest, and right away Mrs. Stickleback laid her eggs into it. Now I am taking good care of them until they hatch." "Keep up the good work," said Mr. Seahorse, and swam on his way. As Mr. Seahorse drifted gently through the sea, he passed right by a lionfish hidden behind a coral reef. Aren't those the coolest fish? But before long, Mr. Seahorse met another fish. "How are you, Mr. Tilapia?" asked Mr. Seahorse. Mr. Tilapia couldn't answer. His mouth was full of eggs. I know," said Mr. Seahorse. "Mrs. Tilapia laid her eggs. Now you're taking good care of them until they hatch." Mr. Tilapia nodded his head. "You must be very happy," said Mr. Seahorse, and swam on his way. As Mr. Seahorse drifted gently through the sea, he passed right by a pair of leaf fish hidden among the seaweed. Aren't those cool? But before long, Mr. Seahorse met another fish. "How are you, Mr. Curtis?" asked Mr. Seahorse. "Perfectly fine," replied Mr. Curtis. "Mrs. Curtis laid her eggs, and I have stuck them on my head. Now I am taking good care of them until they hatch." "You're doing a good job," said Mr. Seahorse, and swam on his way. As Mr. Seahorse drifted gently through the sea, he passed right by a big rock, a stonefish hidden behind a rock. But before long, Mr. Seahorse met another fish. Whoop, that's it. "How are you, Mr. Pipe?" asked Mr. Seahorse. "Couldn't be better," replied Mr. Pipe. "Mrs. Pipe laid her eggs along my belly. Now I am taking good care of them until they hatch. You should feel proud of yourself," said Mr. Seahorse, and swam on his way. But before long, Mr. Seahorse met another fish. "How are you, Mr. Bullhead?" asked Mr. Seahorse. "Tip-top," replied Mr. Bullhead. Mrs. Bullhead laid her eggs, and the eggs hatched. Now I'm babysitting. You're doing a fine job, said Mr. Seahorse, and swam on his way. The time had come for the seahorse babies to be born. Mr. Seahorse wiggled and twisted this way and that. At last the babies tumbled from Mr. Seahorse's pouch and swam away. One baby turned around and tried to come back into the pouch. Oh no, said Mr. Seahorse, I do love you, but now you are ready to be on your own. All right, guys, so again, Eric Carle, fabulous artist, has amazing books. I highly recommend checking out all of his books. They're all beautifully illustrated and written. You probably know The Very Hungry Caterpillar. That one is definitely a favorite, but I definitely wanted to make sure that you heard the book that inspired this project before we started. All right, so the first thing that I want you to do is think about what you want to draw for our creature. So we're going to pick a sea creature and start from there. I would like to do a seahorse. I think seahorses are just the coolest things ever. I love the fact that both of the seahorses, the mom and the dad, they all help raise the babies. It takes a community to raise kids. And, you know, the sea is a really good example of that. So I'm going to go ahead and draw out a seahorse with you. I'm going to set my book right there, my inspiration. And then we're going to look at our paper. So yesterday I just had fun with watercolor. Again, you can use any kind of paint you want. You can use tempera, you can use acrylic, you can paint on tissue paper with watercolor or acrylic or whatever you have, just like Eric Carle. And then you can cut it apart like we're going to do and glue it down. So I had all this beautiful paper and one blank paper because this is going to be our background. So I'm going to look at this paper, and I saw earlier this area right here might make for a fancy little seahorse. So I'm at least going to make a seahorse right there. But I thought perhaps I'd make another one with you. So I'm going to keep that off to the side. And while I keep that off to the side, we're going to create our background. So grab a piece of paper or cardboard. If you don't have paper at your house and you have some boxes laying around, grab cardboard. That works really good too. So for our background, all I'm going to do here is I'm just going to get some colors that I think represent something in the sea, just like Eric Carle did. He grabbed some green and some blue, and we're just going to make some background water. So you could fill this whole thing, or you could just add some little waves. You could give an indication. It's called an indication of water. We're just giving an idea. So I take my brush into my water. Let me scooch it down so you can see it. I get it wet, and then I'll wipe over top of my color. And I don't need to make a big puddle in my watercolor. Let me move it here for you to see. I don't make a big puddle because I don't need a big puddle. All I need is just a little bit of water. There we go, all better. So I'm just gonna get my water, wipe. I have a little extra water in my watercolor today because I have a little guy who was helping me paint earlier and decided that I needed a lot more water than I really did. So we had to get rid of a little bit of water that was left inside of our watercolor palette. We still have some that's a little. Or if you would like to make some dots, you can do dots as well. Whatever you would like, whatever you see in the background for your seahorse. I'm just going to carry these wavy lines over and across and back behind. Sounds like it should be a story. All right, so I've got this. I'm going to set this off to the side and let's get making. Let's go ahead and make our animals. So the first thing we get to do is pick the paper, pick the color, and the type of paper that we want. So I'm thinking for this seahorse, I'll go ahead and make a couple with you. I also added some splatter lines to this one because I thought that would make for a cool little background pattern. But I'm going to start with this seahorse, and we'll make a couple of them. We're going to make a couple seahorses. So here's how I did it. And I'm going to make it with something dark so that you can see it a little better. All right, I started off making a letter J. So this is how I did it. I started off with the top part of my J, and I go, let me make sure my hand isn't in the way. I go down and this way, and I'm just tracing over this first one that I did to show you where my lines are. But this shape right here is a J. So if you can make a J, you can make a seahorse. Maybe, let's see, this guy will work. I'm going to go ahead and go over it with my black marker. So I've got a J to start out with. Now, on the end of my seahorse, on the top of the little part of the J, I want to make a curly tail. So I'm going to curl it down, then I'm going to round it off and go right beside the other line that I made. So I'm just going beside the curve for the J, and as I come over this way, the tail is going to get a little thicker. And you can draw this with a pencil. You don't have to draw with a marker. I'm only drawing with a marker so you can see what I did. And then I'm going to go farther away from my J here because it's the belly of my seahorse. So I want to come out and go whoop, out. If it's Mr. Seahorse, I might want to make the belly even bigger because I know that all of his little babies are riding in his pouch in the front of the seahorse. So then at the top of that J, I'm just going to curve up like so. And then the head kind of looks like a horse, like a real horse. So here's how we're going to do that. To make it look like a horse, I need to add the bottom of the horse's jaw, which is a curved line, just like that. And then we have a little extension out from that because our seahorse, it's like a V. It comes in from the top and down at the bottom like that because our seahorse has that long snout, a little longer than a horse. And then it curves up at the end and connects to the bottom like that. Then we need to give the top of our seahorse's head. You can start from the J and connect to the snout. So we're starting at the J and we're curving up and going over and connecting to that snout. All right? So I added this extra little line here just for decoration. But there's our basic seahorse body. So now what you want to do is cut that basic seahorse body out. Go ahead and grab whatever scissors you've got. This time I brought out the regular scissors. Now don't throw away your extra paper because we will use bits and pieces from all different types of paper to create our final scene. If your scissors get into a location like this that's hard to cut, don't try to fix it because what will happen is you'll usually rip your paper. Turn your paper and come in from this side and then start cutting. So follow the line that you drew and go around your seahorse. Now this could be Mrs. Seahorse and then we can make a Mr. Seahorse. So do you see how my hand is far away? It's over here. I am not anywhere near my fingers. My fingers are nice and far away. I cannot cut myself. So if you've got a little one beside you, remember to remind them to cut away from their hands and to use the hand that is not cutting like it's driving the steering wheel of a race car. So if we need to turn this piece of paper, whoa, this part gets tricky. Now right here in the tail, when you're cutting there, this is how I'm going to suggest we do it. We're going to cut above the tail and go out to the edge of the paper and free the seahorse from the paper. And then we're going to go around the tail and cut that out. And then we're going to go around here We're going to go around here and turn it as we come in, but this gets a little crazy and hairy, so we're not going to do that. We're going to go ahead and connect that cut to the other cut that we made over here. So basically you kind of piece it out. You take little pieces out, whatever's easiest for your scissors. But I will tell you, sometimes little guys have a hard time cutting little turns that are very hard to navigate like that. So they might need your help, and that's okay. It's okay to help them. It's okay to give them a helping hand. All right, so we're going to keep going until we get all of that out of there. And cut and spin. There we go. We've got our seahorse out, and we're going to set him right there. He's going to hang out right there. So now my seahorse, you guys look at your papers and find, oh, I lost connection. Look at your paper and find any area that you see that would make a nice little fin. I'm trying to capture multiple colors in my seahorse. I want him to be nice and bright. Generally, whenever I teach students to draw on a piece of paper and to cut it out, I try to have them cut it out from the edge of the paper so that we don't waste a lot of paper. But this paper isn't going to be wasted. We'll use it on a lot of other things. I have another project that I'd like to use this paper on as well. You can even cut back and forth like this. I'm closing my scissors little by little and turning it like a race car, like this with my turning hand. And there we go. We've got a nice little fin for our seahorse. You can also add some other things to your seahorse if you want your seahorse to maybe have like a little bit of decoration, or some seahorses look like they have almost like spikes coming off of their body. So you could cut little tiny pieces of colors, whatever you think this seahorse needs. Go ahead and cut that out. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that one alone, except for one more thing. It needs an eyeball. So I looked for a white part of my paper to draw a circle. Now I'm going to cut that circle out. And I'm just going to go ahead and cut that. Cut that. Get my circle free from that extra paper so it's easier. And then I'm going to cut away from my fingers, always away from my fingers, always away. If it gets too close to their little fingers, go ahead and help them out again. So I'm going to put that there. My little guy needs an eye. Whoop. And then I need to make the middle of his eye. So I found that this little freckle of brown right in here looked like a good eye to me. I'm going to use that. My suggestion for keeping this paper so that you don't have a whole bunch of paper laying all over your table and making a big old mess is to get a Ziploc bag or an envelope. I have an envelope like this that I'm going to keep the extra bits in. So whatever you have lying around, you can keep your extra bits. All right, so this little guy right here is going to go in the middle of his eye. Second seahorse, I think what I'm going to do is cut him right from, well, I don't know. This area is pretty nice too. I've got lots of great ones. And we want to think too, like our seahorse might need to have some camouflage. I think I'm going to pick this paper. Now what I'm going to do is go ahead and make another seahorse. So if you missed the first seahorse, Here's a second seahorse tutorial. All right, so we're gonna start with a J. Again, we start down here with the J. We go like this, go down, and we're gonna make a fancy J. And then that J is going to curl in like that. So I hope you can see it. Make sure it's focused in on my computer, or my camera. Yep, we're good. And then we're going to bring that tail, gradually make it get farther and farther away from the original J. And then we're going to make this Mr. Seahorse, so we're going to give him his big pouch. And then we're going to come up a little bit for a neck. Give that wide U for the bottom of his chin, like a horse, like a smile. It's a big smile. And then we're going to make his trumpet the front of his face right here. And then the little bump at the end. And then the top of his head. So there we go. We've got Mr. Seahorse and Mrs. Seahorse. And then, where might his fin come from? I'm thinking his fin will come from here. So I'm just going to go ahead and make 2 angled lines, almost like I'm going to start drawing a triangle. And I'm going to make a flat part on this side and a wavy on the other. So that will be his fin. All right, so let's get him out of this paper. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut around Mr. Seahorse and release as much as I can, as easily as I can. I'm going to show you this technique where you come in and you kind of like, this is more of a quicker come back to the top of his nose. Oop. Get the top of his head off of there. We're going to go down around his jaw and stop. Come from the belly, go up. I'm using my hand on this side to steer my paper around. So essentially my scissors are just holding steady and cutting like this. Every once in a while they turn, but mostly it's my steering hand that's turning my paper. And my scissors are just there to chomp, chomp, chomp like an alligator. A hungry alligator. All right, and then I'm going to get in here, go around. There we go. I've got the other seahorse ready to go. All right, let me move him up so you guys can see. There's our 1, 2 seahorses ready to go. I'm going to cut my fin out and then get them glued down. Get that fin out of my paper. Now, the next video, I'll tell you now so that you can prepare. I'm going to do another video like this, inspired by another artist. This next video, we will be creating flowers from paper like this. So you can prepare your paper. You can go ahead and just paint up a storm and make a big paper full of all kinds of colors and get ready for the next one. All right, let me get this out of the way. There we go. So the next thing that you need to do, or what would want to do, is glue all of this down. Now, it's simple. Whenever you're gluing this down, this is kind of the really nice part. I've got some extra paintings on the back of this. This was some scrap paper. I didn't really like what it was happening. You can make a dotted line of glue. You don't have to put a ton of glue on the back of this thing to hold it down, but just make some dots. I always tell my students a little dot will do ya. If you put too much on, it'll glue ya. Sit down. Whoops, I squashed some glue out. See, it glued me. When you have it glued down, what you can do is go ahead and give it a little bit of a massage or gently rub like that. I have a little bit of water on that finger. Gently rub to make sure the whole thing sticks. Or you can set something heavy on top of it, like a book, and go ahead and just walk away for a little bit. So we're going to put a little dot, dot, dot. That's about all you need. And we're going to put this little guy's fin right there. There we go. And then I need to get him an eye too. The other thing I will tell you, if you count to about 20, 25, I like to count to 20 with the kids. It gives them a good practice with counting, but also it's a good time, a good amount of time to count. So that will give you a good amount of time to allow your seahorse and the glue to stick to the paper. If you would like, I don't know if you can see, but this fin right here is attached to the seahorse but not to the paper, so it's a little bit of a 3D effect. There's a little bit of a shadow right underneath here, so that looks really cool. You could go ahead and leave it like that. I think I will. All right, on my seahorse, I do want my seahorse to, be glued close to the edge, so I'm going to go ahead and glue pretty close to my edge and make some dots. Dot, 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 dot. Here's a good way to make sure, let's say they got a little crazy and they added way too many dots. Like this is a bit much. There's a bunch of dots on here. My last one was a bit much too. I kind of was talking and not paying as much attention. Take your finger, go ahead and just go over top of it. That's a good way to spread it out so it's not oozing out all over your paper. And then you will end up with a nice, even application. And then just use your paper towel, wipe off your finger. Go ahead, lay down your second seahorse, and either put a heavy book down on top of it, or, now make sure you're not rubbing it with the part of your finger that was covered in glue. It will take that watercolor and kind of mess it all up. It's water. It's water-based, I should say. So I'm just going to go ahead and push on it because I know I've got a little bit of that liquid on my hand. Get a little bit of a push, and then I can come in and glue on my seahorse's fin. Now again, if you want to release your fin from the back, even if you want to pop it up just a little bit more, a little extra like that, give it a little more of a 3D effect. It looks really beautiful when you do that. So if you allow that seahorse's fin to pop up off of the paper, it makes it a little more three-dimensional. We'll do that with the one down here too. It looks really nice when you do that. So you can pop them up and they become nice and three-dimensional like that. If you don't want to bother cutting little tiny bits for your eyes, you can use a marker, you can use a pen, you can use a crayon. You can use anything you want to go ahead and draw some eyes on it. So I'm actually going to do that. So I'm just going to go ahead and draw a circle and then another circle inside. And then once I have that second circle, I'm going to fill it in all but one tiny little highlight. All right, I've got a circle, another circle. I'm not sure if my video disconnected, but I'm going to keep going. Let's see if I can. Oh, okay. Alright guys, if you are waiting for me to come back, I am trying to get my video to connect. It had a connection error, but you can finish your seahorses. I'm going to go ahead and finish mine. I'm just going to jump on the computer and say hello to Braxton and Courtney and my mom. Hi guys, how are you? Thank you for joining me. Okay, my seahorse, I'm just going to go ahead and end this because my computer is not connecting the video again. I'm not entirely sure what's going on. My guess is that the internet just likes to do that every once in a while. But thank you for joining me.